Is that good? Excellent. All right. So one of the other reminders on here is to thank everyone for their patience for technology. So thank you all for your patience with all this technology stuff. So for those of you on the virtual platform, it would be wonderful right now if you could introduce yourselves. Let folks know your name, your location, maybe an organization you're affiliated with, and your pronouns if you like. And those of us in the space, just take a moment right now, look up, look at the other lovely faces that you can see in the room, and do a little wave to each other. Maybe you know somebody. So the next piece of my welcome is what's called a land acknowledgement. And it goes a little like this. Each of us conducts our business on lands that have been, and still are, the traditional homes of Indigenous peoples. So in our chat, we're going to be placing a link to a map where you can search for your location, your hometown, and see what traditional Indigenous communities overlap where you're located. In this way, we can all acknowledge and share those names in the chat. So go ahead, for those of you online or in person participating in the chat. The church I'm streaming to you from is in Endakina. It's the traditional homeland of the Pennacook tribe of the Abenaki people, and they're all part of the Wabanaki Confederacy of yesterday and today. I am so grateful to the Alnabak, the people who steward Endakina, its land and its waterways through the many changes. There are legacies of displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us all here to where we are today. So this session's acknowledgement invites you to better understand the truths about who we are and how we got here. And in doing so, to know deeply what inclusion means and how our sense of belonging is influenced by our shared past, good and bad. So from this truth, we're going to launch into talking about access to the arts so that we can, with clarity and respect, build a brighter future together. Today, we're having 3 presentations, one from Sierra, one from Erica, and one from Cameron and Jen. We're going to be talking about studying arts and community and connection and access. We're going to be talking about specific programs, and we're going to be talking about holistic institutes that support access to the arts and increased participation. So first, I'd like to bring up Sierra. Sierra was born and raised on a horse ranch in rural Northern California. She recently moved to New England to attend Antioch University for dance movement therapy and couples family therapy. Rather than living in the big city of Keene, she decided to live 30 minutes away so she and her cat could enjoy a more rural lifestyle. With Antioch University and Arts Alive, Sierra is researching how health, loneliness, and the arts entwine here in the Monadnock region. All right, Sierra, which microphone do you want?
I want this one. And I'm going to share my screen online. Hold on. Share screen. Entire screen. It's not giving me the option to share. Just kidding. I figured it out. And we will full screen it. Let's see. Thank you for the introduction, Jess. And hello, everybody at Radically Rural, here and online. My name is Sierra, as Jess said, and with Jess and Tomoyo, we did a research project on access to the arts. Thank you. I'm going to take this off as well. All right, closer to the mic. Everybody can hear me? Can you guys hear me online? I don't have, I can't see you, what you're typing online, I'm sorry. But we got a thumbs up over there, thank you. Thank you. An overview of this research, this presentation. If you look at the image on the right, that is a poster that we put up, and we put up flyers around this community, the Monadnock region in New Hampshire. And we asked people, take this short survey. And yeah, so that's the research that I will be presenting. Well, that's part of it, was the survey. The other parts of focus group, I'll go over that soon. First thing I'm going to talk to you about is health and loneliness and how they're correlated. And then I want to talk about how the arts and loneliness are correlated. And then we did some research to give to the organizations, the arts organizations, around access to the arts, because we think it's important. And then at the end, we'll discuss a little bit about the project. So before I get into health and loneliness, how can we increase community health through the arts? This was a question that we were asking. And the way that we collected data, like I just said, there was an online survey. 361 people took this survey. It was about 8 minutes. So on the poster, we were wrong. We said 5 minutes. It ended up being 8 minutes. But and there was 26 questions. In the focus groups, we got 5 groups of people, 6 to 8 people, and we engaged them in an artistic activity together and then a discussion together, and that took about 75 minutes. These were the questions that we were asking. Is there a connection, is there a correlation between health and loneliness? Is managing loneliness with artistic activity viable? What are barriers preventing participation in community arts events? So these were 3 questions that we wanted answered in our research. This is a spoiler. You increase the arts, loneliness gets decreased, and health gets increased. That's a spoiler, so I'll talk more about that. Oh, thank you to the National Arts Strategies, because they gave us a grant. And thank you, Jess, for writing that. Yeah. So here we go, health and loneliness. This graph is confusing. I don't expect you to understand it right now. The main point is that loneliness and health are inversely correlated. I'll get to this in a moment. We'll get back to that in a moment, I mean. These were questions, these were 4 questions. This is how we opened our survey. And I want you to do it for yourself. I'll walk you through it. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, everybody, how would you rank your current physical health? 1 being frighteningly poor, to 10 being absolutely excellent. Think of a number and hold that number. Okay, we're gonna move on. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank your current mental health? The same question, but mental instead of physical. And again, it's on frighteningly poor as 1, absolutely excellent as 10. Hold that number. If you want to add them together and hold just 1 number, you can do that, because we're going to move on to the loneliness part. On a scale of 1 to 10, how often have you felt lonely in the past 3 months? From 1 being never, I haven't felt lonely in the past 3 months, to 10 being never ending. So think of a number between 1 and 10 that represents that for you. And then the last question is on loneliness again. On a scale of 1 to 10, how intense are your typical feelings of loneliness when they arise? 1 being non-existent, 10 being unmanageable. So hold that number. If you want to add those 2 numbers together, you can do that too. And so now you should have roughly 2 numbers, 1 for loneliness and 1 for health. This is that graph. We got this information from 248 people right from this region. It was self-reported, and the blue and red line. Yeah, there's a problem. It's not connected. I apologize. Retry. I disconnected from the room for some reason. Yeah? Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. Here we go. Just doing it again. There. Can you see? Okay. I can't hear you very well. Um, yeah, if I can't connect, then that will, yeah, that's our backup plan. Oh, that's a bummer. That's not mine. That one's mine. So we're going to, yeah, that graph, but there's, yeah, 11. Thank you. I hope you all remember your numbers. Oh, they're the same. They're the same. But uh, that's right. It's really a memory test. No, I didn't do that on purpose. Thank you, technology. You're helpful in some ways. All right, so back to this graph that was pretty confusing in the beginning, and hopefully I can explain it to you because I've looked at this graph for a long time and been like, ooh, that's cool, because there's a lot of information in here. So physical health and mental health, that's in the blue and the red. Okay, if you look on the left, when people were saying no, oh, I'm sorry, when people are saying, yeah, my physical and mental health, they're pretty strong. Um, then loneliness and loneliness intensity, so the frequency and intensity of loneliness was pretty low. And as you move further on the graph, as loneliness frequency increases, then you can see a drop in physical and mental health, and especially in mental health. And this is just a trend. It's not true for everybody, and I want to make that clear, but it's just a trend. So if you fit into that trend, awesome. If you don't, that's fine too. But this information can help us understand, well, there's got to be a correlation between the two of them. And we're not the first people to think of this. There's a lot of other research on it. That's right. Can you change the slide? I'm changing it on here like it's still. Thank you. Can you move on? And again? There we go. All right. So yeah. Loneliness increases death probability, suicidal ideation, heart disease, and depression. This is from another research. And then also straight from the US government, if you look at the very bottom, it says, loneliness is more dangerous than obesity and as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So correlation. Next slide. Oh, I gotta hit here. Okay, so we were wondering, are arts experience a means of liberating individuals from loneliness? Next slide. Loneliness in the arts, that's what we're gonna talk about next. Next slide. So look on the right, participation in artistic creative activities positively affects mental health for adults. And then again, said on a different article, there are clear positive indications of health for people who participate in artistic engagement, meaning there's a direct correlation between the arts and health. And then also other groups are working on arts and loneliness. So this graphic, loneliness is as lethal as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. We talked about that. And this is the Unlonely Project, straight from American for the Arts. So like I said, we're not the only ones to be thinking this. Next. But we did want to see the data from our region. So in that survey, we asked people, do you engage in artistic activities to manage loneliness? And 65% of them said yes. That's about a third. And the other third either didn't answer or said no. They don't use arts to manage loneliness. Next slide, please. But this cool thing happened because we also asked them to think about their last artistic activity that they participated in, and then to rank how it affected their loneliness. So the people that said, yes, I use arts to manage loneliness, 80% of them said that they felt less lonely after their last artistic activity. But even cooler, I think, is that the people who said, no, I don't use arts to manage loneliness, 3 out of 5 of them said that they felt less lonely after participating in the arts. Uh, yes. So the question was, did we ask people what do you consider to be artistic expression? And we did not, but we did define it. Yeah. That's a good question. So yeah, even if people say that they weren't using arts to manage loneliness, arts were decreasing loneliness as shown in this question. Next slide, please. So we didn't just want the data, we also wanted to hear the stories, and this is where the focus groups come in. I'm gonna read this quote that we got from a focus group, and this is somebody who uses artistic expression. They said, "But just being in a room full of people who create things makes me go home and go to work." And that's been a big thing during this whole isolation. I go in thinking, well, okay, I'll work on a painting this afternoon. I get in and I can't bring myself to squeeze the paint out of the tube. So yeah, I never thought of myself as much of a social animal, but apparently I am. Another quote from somebody else in the focus group. They were replying to a person who had just talked. "The previous speaker reminded me of this poetry slam I went to once and how I brought a poem from home. I wasn't going to read it, and I got up there and I did it. The amount of support and love and energy you get from people just saying, yeah, that's you. You did that. And you can't do that without other people. You need other people for that to exist. So thank you for bringing up open mics and things like poetry slams." Yeah. Next slide. Oh, you did. Can you read that? No? Okay, well, we asked people, what were you doing to manage loneliness before the pandemic? And we also asked them, what are you doing to manage loneliness now? And it's kind of fun to see the difference between the numbers. So this biggest slice, which is purple, it says creating music. Do you think that went up or do you think that went down during the pandemic? Up? Can you go to the next slide? Do you see? Creating music. It went up just a little bit. It's at 16.4 now. Can you go back? Okay. Next one, dance. Do you think dance went up or do you think dance went down during the pandemic? Down. Oh, we got one up back there and two ups. Next slide. Yeah. Did you see dance? It went way down. It about halved. Yeah. Go back. What about writing? Did writing go up? We got a lot of ups around here. Good. And the next slide. Writing is now at 12.7%, so it did go up. And journaling went up about the same amount as well. Can you go back once more? Is there anything on this chart that you want to know? Did it go up or down? If you can read it. What? Baking? What's baking on it? Food is on it. Yeah, food is on it. Okay. It's 2 point. Oh, can you? Baking went down or food went down. Yeah, that could also be people eating together. And I want to thank Jess for compiling this information because this was a lot of information to compile. And there's more. And there's more. So yeah, we know what people were doing and what people are doing to manage loneliness. Yeah, post and pre-pandemic or during and pre. Next slide, please. Did you? Yeah. What in our community is aiding and preventing participation in arts experiences? We were wondering this because we want to give it to the arts organizations in our community. For the organizations. So we asked people in this survey, what makes a welcoming community space? And the biggest one was an organization's policies, structures, people, and norms. Also important was how space is laid out, presented, used. Other things that are important are the ways to actively engage the audience and the culture and behavior of the audience members themselves. So in this graph, we can break down each of these categories. So next slide, please. How an organization creates welcoming spaces, this was the biggest part of the pie chart, of that previous pie chart. And we can break it down and really see what people are saying. It's a lot of data. All right, next slide, please. Also, what we asked was, what have or may prevent participation in these community artistic activities? Bless you. Timing of events was number one. Also important was the cost, the weather. Social anxiety was really important. That came up in the focus groups quite a bit. Yeah, people just being anxious to go. And something I thought was interesting, and I mean, we thought was interesting, was that if somebody knows the event or the organizer or the group, the organization, they're more likely to go because they feel comfortable. They trust, there's trust there. We didn't ask that. Yeah, the question was like, because the arts are kind of competing with places like Netflix, like going out and doing something as a community versus staying at home. We didn't ask that, but that would be interesting. Yeah, that could be in the other. Exactly. Easier to stay at home. Right. Good point. Next slide, please. We also asked people, what activities do you want? Because that's important. That's going to increase interest, and disinterest was a reason for people not to come out. So music, arts, and craft events was number one, but also this might be biased because the survey was asking about the arts. So people that are answering the questions are thinking about arts. Yeah. But it's important to note that things like nature, food and culture, other events, they're on people's minds too. Next slide. So all of this information isn't very important if we didn't give it to the community. And this presentation is one way that we're doing that. And we are also making modules or making videos of this information, going a little bit more in depth to it, telling the community, telling the arts organizations, this is what you can do. Because if they go out and do it themselves, it's not going to be as effective as if we're all united and doing it together. So this picture is of the scripts that we are writing and recording. We recorded on Monday. We got to record again, and it's been fun. It's been real fun. Next slide. All right, let's discuss a couple of things about this study because it's not perfect. Next slide. But it does have some strengths. So our questions were quite comprehensive. We got a good amount of data. The answer types were the Likert scale, the 1 to 10. Also, they were open-ended, and yeah, that was a lot to shift through and organize. And also, we had the focus groups to expand on those stories. Yeah. Next slide. Of some weaknesses, there was skewed participation. Mostly white, mostly educated, and this study is alluring to people who already are in the arts, which is not the demographic that we are really shooting for, but it's what we have right now. Next slide, please. Some future research goals. We don't understand the correlation between health and loneliness very well, or the causation. We understand that there's a correlation, but the causation. Does loneliness cause health or poor health? Does poor health cause loneliness? We don't understand that interaction very well. Data collection, we did this all during the pandemic, so collection post-pandemic could be useful. And everything in this study was self-reported, so perhaps some observational data. More efficient and effective strategies for targeted audiences. This is what I mentioned before. We had skewed participation. That's not ideal. The application of this study, building strategies to increase arts access in partnership with public health institutions, community awareness building on the impact of arts on loneliness and community health, teaching arts organizations what we learned. This is what we're doing right now. Next slide. As a recap, arts engagement can improve health. And this is how we defined health and all the other things. So health is the well-being of a person, whether mental or physical. Loneliness is a perceived lack of social support, social integration, and social relationship. And there's a correlation. That's what that arrow means. There's a correlation between health and loneliness. And then over to arts engagement, which is the participation in artistic expression, such as writing, photography, crafts. And we, through the survey, saw arts engagement does affect loneliness in a positive way or in a negative way. Well, you understand. And then we didn't study how arts engagement affects health directly, though there are other studies about that. Next slide. So, if arts engagement can successfully improve health outcomes through combating loneliness, then community arts should be a public health strategy for the Monadnock region and other regions. Well, just to remind you, this presentation was brought to you by a rural community. And last slide, thank you.
Thank you, Sierra. Can you turn your mic off?
Yes.
All right. So, that was awesome. We have started with the idea of why is arts access important, and an example of a study, how we investigated that. But right now we're going to take a little break. I'm going to invite Dr. Tomoyo Kawano up. She is also a partner in this study. I'm going to read this. She's an associate professor and director of the Dance Movement Therapy Program at Antioch University. And she grew up in Japan, Peru, Venezuela, Italy, and in New York City, and off the grid in Vermont. She now enjoys living in the woods in New Hampshire, and Tomoyo is going to lead us in a brief movement exercise to keep us alert, grounded, and connected this morning. And then I'll bring Erica up.
Good morning, everybody. Ohayo gozaimasu. Any Japanese people in the audience? No. Okay. All right. So as we transition, we're transitioning right now. Is that right? Or no, it's not. Okay. All right. I just wanted to invite you all to just take in all of that information that was presented to you and just breathe. Notice your body. Wherever you are in a comfortable position, I want to invite you to maybe stand up. If you'd like to get up and do a little stretching, feeling your feet on the ground. Yes, I see a little bit of this and a little bit of this. Just noticing those around you, like a little shaking. Little flipping, flopping of the hands, extremities. Nice. Little swing. What's that?
So we're looking like a different kind of church.
Worshiping is great. Okay, so let's take a collective breath if you feel invited to do so. If we can inhale and really expand our bodies as much as possible, so making ourselves really large. So inhaling. Inhale, taking all that air, oxygen, fresh air, all the way to the extremities of your body. And exhaling like a balloon without the air. Let's try it one more time. Inhaling. And exhale. Just noticing how your body is feeling right now. Yep. Allow yourself to move around your shoulders, maybe your head, circling around those joints, synovial fluids. Maybe circle the hips. Listening to the bells. Maybe circling your feet, your ankles, your knees. Just feeling more space in your body. And don't forget your jaws, your face. Make sure there's air, loosening, mouth, nose, eyes, maybe the ears. And maybe a little bit of a sound, a relief. Listening to the beautiful music. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. And pass it back to Jess.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chimoyo. I'm feeling a little more energized and ready for the next one. So next we have Erica Barreto. She's a multicultural educator, a creative placemaker, and a spirited community organizer. She's interested in producing experiential spaces for education, dialogue, and action. Throughout each of her roles, her work focuses on using the arts and human-centered design to catalyze social change and structural transformation. She's employed at the Institute for the Arts and Humanities at Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. And she's the youngest appointed member serving on the board of directors for WHAM Theater and for Bridge Incorporated, which stands for Berkshire Resources for Integration of Diverse Groups Through Education. That's a long acronym. I love it. Come on up, Erica. Do you want to use that mic?
Yeah. Are we all set? No. Says I'm sharing. Cool. So yeah, thank you for the introduction and thank you for a wonderful performance. Yeah, let's do that. Hello. So we're going to talk about increasing access to the arts. But I want to start off just by, again, thank you for that lovely introduction. But I am a multicultural educator. I grew up in a multicultural and multilingual household. I'm the daughter of immigrants born in Ipanema, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and Guiamonte Juntas, Algarve, Portugal. My half-sisters are Cuban. We have family in Costa Rica and Switzerland. And so that exposure to those cultures really taught me to celebrate our differences, as well as, the importance in educating ourselves to know the extent of those differences. So being a multicultural educator is not only something that I do, it's who I am. And so I'm also a creative placemaker because I believe in strengthening our communities through the power of the arts. And I'm a community change maker because I love working with my community. I think there's something magical that happens when we come together and, think of creative and strategic solutions to the change we want to see. So with that, this is where I live. I live, work, create, and play in the Berkshires, which is also the ancestral homeland of the Mohicans. I currently reside in North Adams, and I'm really grateful to call this place home. Um, you know, oh, yeah. So in North Adams, I'm walking distance from Mass MoCA, which is the country's largest contemporary museum, and I'm driving distance from some world-renowned institutions like Tanglewood. So today I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the Berkshires, some research that's been done, and how that's all informing the work that I'm doing. So let's get into it. Berkshire County. Thank you. So Berkshire County has the second largest arts economy per capita in the country. So we are home to over 150 art and cultural organizations, and these organizations serve as a really significant resource for year-round residents as well as a major draw for tourists. So while we are in proximity to this wealth of resources, though, it's been challenging to activate them. So when a challenge like that exists, there are those of us who want to know why. So research has been conducted to discover what are some barriers to arts participation as well as barriers to arts education. So this research comes from Leveraging Change, which was published in 2017 by Lisa Donovan and Maureen Brown. And some of the challenges that they note are lack of funding, geographic dispersion, poverty and lack of economic opportunity, and so forth. So these are challenges that are not specific to the Berkshires, though. These are specific to each and every one of us working within rural areas. So when we look more closely at the Berkshires, additional research was facilitated by the Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation as part of their Arts Build community initiative. So they conducted community-based participatory research with residents of the community and released key findings such as the need to adapt to demographic shifts. The increasing foreign-born population and communities of color have grown 76% since 2000. So this requires renewed attention to cultural competence practices, school-based and other services to help integrate English language learners, as well as other marginalized populations. Another demographic shift is the growing income disparity between year-round residents and those seasonal residents and tourists, as well as the growth in the senior population. And then again, the geographic dispersion between urban, suburban, and rural populations. All of these are demographic trends that necessitate, unique responses to engagement in the arts. So through interviews with members of the community, we also heard highlighted concerns about the lack of networking opportunities that in the past facilitated collaboration, information sharing, and increased visibility for the sector. So this communicates a desire for more of those shared learning opportunities so that we can work together and learn more about the robust participations to what's preventing robust participation in the arts. And so then, of course, we anticipated that cost was going to be a barrier, but it's way more than cost. Free programming or reduced programming isn't enough. Of course, transportation and affordable parking, weather, but also content relevance. And this last one is important, the creation of welcoming environments and experiences. When participants in the study were asked whether or not they felt included in the arts, unfortunately, 52% of them said no. So when I hear data like that, it brings us back to this question of, are we creating these content, these spaces, because they want them, or are we just assuming? And so that's a question we have to consider and keep coming back to. So that's a snapshot of the research. And fortunately, there is work being done to respond to it. When looking at the challenges, strengths and opportunities reveal themselves when looking at the rural assets. And so with this, some promising practices are being implemented across the county. So some of the ways that this is being activated is through the Berkshire County Blueprint for Arts Integration and Education. And so this is a map specifically for K through 12. We also have the Berkshire Cultural Assets Network, which serves as a professional learning network for arts educators and teaching artists. So moving forward, I'm going to talk about the work that I'm doing at the Institute for the Arts and Humanities, but I want to take a moment to go back to this idea of promising practices. And I want to emphasize that, of course, building these practices comes from knowing one's own unique context. These practices only take root when we're paying attention to what's around us and thinking strategically about how we can respond to the unique needs of the community. So every asset or every region has assets that link to promising practices. So if there's anything that this presentation can prompt you to think about, it's this, what are the assets within your community? So in my community, I have the benefit of working alongside my mentor, Dr. Lisa Donovan, who is leading a lot of the work and research that I've mentioned. So I have the opportunity now, because of her leadership, to take those key findings and continue advancing that work in the context of higher education. So as mentioned, I work with the MCLA Institute for the Arts and Humanities at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts, or MCLA. MCLA is number 7 on the list of top public colleges, and we have just risen to number 22 as a top performer on social mobility. We are the first among all Massachusetts schools to make it onto that list. So the Institute, or IAH as we call it, is a grant-funded initiative made possible by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, and we work to promote equity-centered change by expanding access to area arts and humanities resources, by catalyzing interdisciplinary engagements, and by advancing experiential teaching and learning practices. So basically, we provide the resources, the funds, the connection, and the personnel to create those experiential spaces for education, dialogue, and action. And the arts are our primary vehicle for change. So I have this quote here, not only because the W.E.B. Du Bois Homestead is also in the Berkshires, but because it's true. Art and culture have power. They provide us an opportunity to move outside ourselves to achieve greater impact. They help us build radical empathy, which helps us move into creating and sustaining those equitable communities that reflect and empower all the diverse individuals that make up those collectives. So what does this look like in the context of higher ed and at MCLA? So in 2017, the Mellon Foundation approached us with an initial planning grant. This is where we did the research and the work. We got together an interdisciplinary team of faculty to form the Berkshire Humanities Council. At this time, I was a research associate on the planning grant, and my job was to catalog all of the amazing resources in the county. So I said we have over 150. I started with 87 to begin with, and my job was to familiarize myself with absolutely everything they had to offer. So this experience was really significant because not only did it introduce me to organizations I didn't know existed, but the more organizations I discovered, the more I started to see my multicultural identity reflected. And that helped me create an unshakable sense of belonging in the Berkshires. So I got to experience firsthand how the arts create that experience, and it's something that I want every Berkshire County resident to experience. So that's how I entered into the work. And initially, they wanted us to create an asset map. And we had some concerns around this because an asset map is static. It just sits there. There's no one to ask or answer questions. There's no one to edit or maintain it. So it was a lot of work, and I felt like it wasn't going to achieve that impact. So when the leadership at the Mellon Foundation changed, they invited us to rewrite the proposal. So we scrapped the asset map and wrote the proposal that led to the Institute for the Arts and Humanities. And so instead of an asset map, we have an office, we have staff, we have resources to catalyze this work, and we have programs. And each of our programs are designed to meet the needs of our specific audiences, which are faculty, students, arts organizations, and community groups. But as I said before, activating the arts is still a challenge. Just because we know that possibilities for interdisciplinary engagements exist doesn't mean that the community is aware. So each semester we produce a season preview which highlights select Berkshire-based arts and humanities resources. We share this digitally, we host forums, we do class visits and meetings, we do everything to get this information out there. And so in this way, the season preview is acting as a springboard. Faculty and students are able to create really unique opportunities in collaboration with our cultural assets. The low-hanging fruit for the season preview is that we're introducing the community to groups and programs that you didn't know about. But the larger goal for us is to think about, how can we create an educational arts-based experience that is fundamentally different than other institutions and universities simply because of the unique cultural context that we're in. We're surrounded by a plethora of arts and cultural resources. When students come here, they should engage with those. So what that looks like, these are some examples from our faculty fellowship program. In the top example, we have Multicultural Bridge and WAM Theater, who are working together on a performance of Pipeline, which is produced by Dominique Morisseau, and it tells the story of a family struggling to outrun social prophecy. So we brought together students from arts management and sociology to talk about the school to prison pipeline and microaggressions and all of that we deconstructed that heavy content, and then the Institute paid for transportation and admission to the theater performance. In this bottom example, we have the American Ethnic Studies class, and this was a semester-long collaboration with the Norman Rockwell Museum. Students had the opportunity to collaborate with the chief curator, the education director, and they reflected on Rockwell's work and thought about how does it represent or how does it not represent historically marginalized people's histories and their perspectives. So then students also had the chance to rewrite labels for Rockwell's artwork to make it more culturally relevant, and they presented that work at the museum in front of a live and virtual audience. So these are just two examples of what the work looked like before the pandemic. When COVID hit college campuses, we had to shift to hybrid and remote instruction. So while we couldn't do this, we were still really interested in partnering with our organizations. So we rallied to offer a virtual summer symposium. We felt it was very important for our community to have the time and space to discuss these topics, so we chose a theme of art and accountability. And our goal was that they would gather, learn from the expertise of professionals in the field, and then continue this work not only in their own institutions, but then we would become a more connected region. So we started off by inviting Dr. Bria Heidelberg, who's also a National Arts Strategies colleague, and we explored this question of what does it mean to create brave spaces. So this session created the foundation for participating arts organizations to build a shared vocabulary, and then to also learn how to avoid common pitfalls as they continue this work in their organizations. From there, we moved on to anti-racist theater work, where we invited Dawn Meredith Simmons and Nicole Brewer to speak with representatives from Berkshire-based theater organizations such as Shakespeare and Company and WAM Theater. And so together we were responding to We See You White American Theater, which is a list of BIPOC demands for theater companies. So this one created an opportunity for theater workers to share their experience while also addressing the concerns or the accountability work that is coming out of this growing nation. That is growing nationally. And so then the third installment that I would argue was the most important. We brought together 7 organizations that were also participating in Berkshire Taconix's Arts Build Community Initiative. And this one was responding to systemic and collective trauma with community partnership, addressing culture and community in a regional conversation. This one was facilitated by Quinna Barrett and Rebecca Martinez from the Center for Performance and Civic Practice. And this conversation really explored the importance of listening and responding to the community as we noticed the issues that were emerging. So we also wanted to emphasize that the issues that we were noticing weren't specific to one institution. Oh, you did this or you're failing at that. We wanted to emphasize that it's revealing a larger common pattern about the culture in the Berkshires, and that affects all of our community members. So this conversation required arts leaders to take accountability, to respond to community members' concerns, and everyone had to leave the session noting at the very least one commitment that they could implement. So after having 3 demanding but necessary conversations, we decided to celebrate with some art. So we partnered with the Mastheads, which is a organization working with architecture, literary research, and other arts-based programming. And so we offered Inscapes, which is an experiential poetry workshop, and it also launched a regional campaign. So an inscape is a term used to define the unique essence of a place. So we asked Berkshire residents, what does the Berkshires mean to those who live here? They then had an opportunity to write poems or 2-line couplets for a chance to be designed and featured on billboards. And so in wanting to meet people where they are and bringing the art to them, we were very strategic about the placement of our billboards between North and South County. That geographic dispersion, people don't get to see each other as much. So this was really lovely, and I'm excited to be working with the Mastheads again this fall so that they could do something similar with our students. So These are examples of the work that we have been doing to advance the community's access and engagement with the wealth of resources. So to recap, we are introducing and collaborating with arts organizations as well as sponsoring partnerships to catalyze these engagements. So just in the past year alone, we've partnered with over 50 of these organizations to provide the community consistent access to area arts and humanities resources. We have also facilitated over 30 community engagements, including those discussion forums for community organizations to connect and learn from one another. And then also, have that time to reflect on how we're going to make those critical changes that respond to the needs. So in response to this work, community partners have voiced that we are providing clarifying examples for how to take restorative action. Through the networking opportunities we provided this summer, one participant voiced that they have committed to building relationships and support systems outside their institution and with other members of the community so that we can continue to hold each other accountable, but then also hold each other up because this is heavy. So at the college, we are catalyzing this work by bringing opportunities for faculty and students to engage with these arts organizations more deeply. Faculty are noting that the institutions are welcoming and they are providing really unique opportunities for us to engage with the arts. So, to date, we've awarded over $20,000 to fund 12 interdisciplinary arts-based faculty-led projects. We brought together adjunct and tenured faculty across various departments, including fine and performing arts, arts management, English communications, biology, sociology, education, and so on. So our goal was to connect faculty to the arts so that they could leverage those connections for our students, but then we ended up connecting them to each other. We broke them outside their individualized silos, and we all have this idea of how can we make MCLA, and not just our specific classroom, a really wonderful place for our students. So that was really exciting. We're also connecting the arts and the sciences so that students don't have to decide between one or the other. So we're moving away from either or, and we're saying yes and. Yes, how can you engage with us, and how can we make this a better experience for our students? And so clearly, I think that our students are the most important audience that we're serving, and they are involved in absolutely every aspect of this work. I started in this work as a research associate when I was a senior in college. So one student had voiced that their participation in our advisory board created an opportunity for them to affect real change while also having their opinion and their voices heard. One of our community partners said that they really enjoyed working with our interns as well. So we have a very dedicated team of interns that actively participate in the planning, design, execution, and evaluation of all the work because we can't create anything for them without them. We're also creating opportunities to steward emerging artists and arts managers. We understand that the youth are our future. So how can we prepare them to continue this work professionally? So to date, we've awarded over $32,000 to fund student internships designed to develop skills and expertise. They are building network connections, which from renowned institutions, they're giving job references from Williamstown Theater Festival, and this is leading to employment opportunities in the creative economy. And then naturally, they're also beginning to possess a fundamental understanding of how the arts and culture can leverage the social change that they want to see. So also, yeah, we're providing them a real sense of ownership for the change work that they are leading. It's them. So earlier, though, I had shared information about the Berkshires, and I want to note that those demographic changes are also being reflected at the college. We now have 36% of our student body who identify as students of color, and they also voice that they don't necessarily feel welcomed in the community, and this is affecting our retention rates. So when I'm thinking about our mission to activate the arts, we also have really conscious attention to how can we support our arts partners in creating those welcoming environments for our students. Because we want our students who come here to our home away from home to want to be here, to enjoy the community and to feel part of it. So, and I also want them to see themselves reflected in the cultural assets that are in the county. So I mentioned belonging earlier, and I'm mentioning it again because it is so crucial for us. Having a sense of belonging, it's crucial for our life satisfaction, for our happiness, our mental and physical health. It gives us a sense of purpose and meaning. So how can we leverage and activate the arts to help others find that sense of belonging in their home away from home? So this work is personally meaningful, collectively significant, and very purposeful. We put a lot of time and intention. It has been one of the greatest pleasures and challenges of my young adult life, but I'm grateful to activate the work because I'm seeing the change on campus and in the greater Berkshire region. So the work isn't done, and it's our work, each and every one of us. So again, I just want to leave you with some questions, and I hope you take some time to reflect on them. But, what is the unique context of your region? How has your community shifted? What are community members voicing about what is or what isn't working? What are the resources that exist? And how can those resources be activated and amplified? I believe that when we possess this understanding, the possibilities reveal themselves, the people rally, and the change happens. So, thank you. Sure. Do I have time?
We're actually gonna just move on to the next presenter and we'll do questions at the end. You can also pop your questions into the chat and if you're online. And if we do have time at the end of the presentation, we'll definitely get to your questions. So our last presenter is coming to us virtually. So I'm excited to see how this works. Our last presentation is from an organization called Art Services. It's about their Arts Access program. So the presenters are going to be Jennifer Swan Kilpatrick and Cameron Handel. And just a little bit about their program. Their Arts Access program is a program that opens the door to arts and culture for all Western New Yorkers by connecting them to free and low-cost cultural opportunities in their community. They've partnered with more than 50 local theaters, galleries, and other arts and cultural institutions to offer low-income individuals and their families of Erie and Niagara counties the chance to see, experience, and participate in live art shows. And I don't want to give away anything else because I'm sure they cover all this in their presentation. So I'd love to bring up virtually Jen and Cameron.
Hi, everyone. As we're waiting, I don't see Cameron yet, but I will wait until we have our PowerPoint up. We're glad to be here virtually, and we'll be with you in just 1 second. All right, thanks everyone. As I mentioned before, we're really excited to be here virtually. Cameron and I are in Buffalo, New York, presenting to you. So really excited to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about our Arts Access program that Jess already introduced, really talk about how it was created. But really, I'm going to start off by introducing our organization and the role that we play in our community and the reason that we came up with the Arts Access program and really the history behind that. Art Services Inc., we call ourselves ASI. We are the area's Arts Council and Resource Center. Oh, and I think my opening screen dropped off, but that's okay. You get to see my face now. So we are located in Buffalo, New York, as I mentioned, and we actually represent the 5 counties of Western New York. So if you think about the state of New York, we are the farthest west that you can get before going into Ohio and Pennsylvania. And we serve 5 counties here, and they're really diverse counties. So when we think about the counties that we serve, we have a county that has the city of Buffalo. We have a county that has the city of Niagara Falls, which, as you can imagine, has a lot of tourism and visitors. And then also we have a county, Chautauqua County, in which we have Jamestown, which is a city center as well. So in addition to those city centers, we also have a lot of urban and rural communities as well. So there's a really great geographic span that we serve. And our program is meant to serve all of those. So it's not a one size fits all, as you can imagine. And there is our slide back up there again. Thank you for dealing with the technical difficulties. So as you can imagine, we have a great deal of geography to work across, but really this is why Arts Services Inc., ASI, created the Arts Access program, because we wanted to bridge a lot of those barriers between those in our community who either were interested and supportive in all of the arts activities that are taking place, but maybe they had financial barriers, maybe they had transportation barriers. So really, we started off small, and ASI is really actually known for being the resource center, particularly for arts and cultural organizations and artists themselves, and not necessarily a producing organization. So we don't produce our own content, we don't have our own events, but really we're there as a liaison and a resource center for others who are doing that cultural and arts content and providing it to the general public. So really this Arts Access program is meant to be that connector between what can ASI provide to our many arts and cultural organizations that they're already offering, and then how can we connect them to those residents, those community members that really want to access their programs and events, but they may have some barriers in doing so. So in 2013, we started the Arts Access program, and it started off small. And we did it as a pilot where we initially looked at the local theater community. And the reason that we did this is because our theater community, particularly in the Buffalo, New York area, has something every year that they call Curtain Up. So it is a way that all theaters, regardless of size, scope, where they're physically located, they can celebrate and curtain up, and they all have one event that opens up on that day where everyone says the theater community is open, everybody come out and celebrate. You can either go to a show, regardless of which theater you're going to, or you can come to, they used to have a street party. So everyone would come and celebrate and just make sure that everyone knew theater season is here. And so we thought, what a great opportunity that would be to launch the Arts Access program in line with this Curtain Up event, right? It's already a big celebration. So many people are thinking about theater and have theater on their mind. And so in 2013, we launched the Arts Access program primarily with these theater partners. So the theaters that participate in this Curtain Up event, we talked to them, we had them sign contracts with us, and Cameron will talk about that a little more. She gets into the details of the program, but it just seemed like a very organic and natural partnership that we start with the local theaters and see where it goes from there. And really the program is meant to be that connector. And we started with theaters, but now that we've been doing it since 2013, our arts partners range all artistic disciplines. So it could be theaters, could be other performing arts, it's mixed media, it's film, it's arts classes, so on and so forth. So I can go on and on and on about how we created the program, but I actually will now turn it over to Cameron to really talk about the logistics of the program, what it does, who we serve, and how it actually works. So go ahead, Cameron.
Thanks, Jen. Alrighty, and okay, let's get started here. Perfect. So specifically, Arts Access is designed to remove any sort of financial barriers that may cause individuals from not being able to attend arts or cultural shows or events. And so anyone who receives any sort of government income-based assistance like SNAP, HEAP, or WIC, they are eligible for our program, and they receive a pass, which allows them to claim tickets to any one of our location or event partners. And with our program, the barriers that we really address are transportation, cost, and knowledge. And the huge portion of knowledge for our pass holders is that we need different types of communication to reach out to everyone, especially since internet is not universal. So we offer physical applications at our office and at our sign-up locations and with some of our partner organizations as well. Pass holders receive physical event packets, which contains all of the information needed to plan their visits and to contact the organizations. And these are mailed out to them every year upon renewal in August. We also have our Facebook group, our newsletter, and our events page on our website. The Facebook group is really helpful because it allows pass holders to sort of reach out to each other, answer their own questions, or see what other events are going on. Event locations are able to announce their any sort of free events or classes which may be taking place. And the same goes for our newsletter. Although this was originally intended for keeping communication out during COVID to see what sort of virtual planning was going on. But this was adapted to more, well, as everything happily opens up more and more, these openings are announced on the newsletter. Same thing with our events page. So our partner organizations, currently in this season, we have just over 40 arts and cultural partner locations. These are art museums, theaters, science museums, and even a children's museum as well. And they serve as community outreach, and they are resource connections, especially since they help advocate for our program. People who may not know what our program is specifically can help educate what the program is and help direct them for renewing or registering for a pass. Our sign-up locations are especially useful as resource connections because these are usually out of community centers, and they help directly connect pass holders with information about our program, as well as any other information they may need as well. And it also just helps us reach as many eligible individuals as possible in our community. Transportation is a huge key factor in making sure everyone can get to these events as well. We partner with the transportation crew, and pass holders can reserve a ride up to 2 weeks prior to their event. And our transportation also accommodates walkers, wheelchairs, and service animals, or anyone who may assist the pass holder as well. It's very useful since many of our pass holders use wheelchairs or have aids or service animals as well. And these may not be available on public transportation, or may be more difficult to use, or it's just very time consuming. This allows more independence for our pass holders to attend these events. And transportation It also is renewed in August with our events and sign-up locations. We just maintain our connection to this group, and they are awesome.
And Cameron, if you don't mind, before you go into your last couple of slides, I will make a comment about transportation as well. What's really interesting and unique about the transportation piece is that our pass holders do not have to pay for it. Art Services actually covers all of the cost for their transportation, and so I think we'll talk about this a little later in the Q&A. But we do get some grant funding that we utilize at ASI where we cover that cost, and so it's never at the cost of the pass holders themselves. We take care of all of that. Cameron is wonderful and handles all the logistics and the scheduling, but all of that is really taken care of by ASI, so that the pass holder does not have to worry about any of those things. All they know is that if they do not have access to get there, we can figure it out for them.
Yes, perfect. All right, and I have a couple quotes here from previous pass holders or current pass holders, just about their experience with the program. We have here that our group included a 92-year-old, a 95-year-old, and an 88-year-old who had never been to any type of live performance before. And our next slide was a parent who used the Arts Access program to attend arts events with my 6-year-old daughter. And these experiences allow my daughter to appreciate the arts and give us memories we'll never forget. Because not only does the pass include the individual, but it also includes one guest. So parents are able to use this for their children, or people are able to use this for their family members as well. So it is a really great experience for all. All right. And any questions or comments, you can email me at artsaccess@asiwny.org or give me a call at the number listed there too. And our website's listed also.
And I will make one more comment before we officially end, because it does tie back into the very first presentation. And Cameron, I don't know if you want to take a minute or so to talk about this, but something we've been talking about adding to the program that we don't currently have right now is doing some group arts access nights where we get a group of pass holders together. And I think it really ties into what we talked about in the first presentation about arts and loneliness. Cameron, I don't know if you want to say a few words about what some of the pass holders have been asking for in relation to that.
Yes, this definitely ties into the past two presentations. As renewal season began and I started getting applications in, we have an area for pass holders to write other sorts of things that may prevent them from attending events around Buffalo. And I saw a lot of written in comments that they had no one to go with. And so we are planning more arts access nights where pass holders can meet at either a museum or another type of cultural institution, and we'll all get to meet each other instead of being too nervous to go alone.
Thanks, Cameron, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Online, pop your questions in the chat. All the participation. So if you're online, go ahead and pop your question in the chat. If you were a presenter, come on up here. Everybody gets their own microphone. Tomoyo, you too. So, and those of you guys that are in the room, you could absolutely raise your hand. All right. So everyone grab a mic. Make sure you keep it off until you speak. And if you want to spread out a little more, we can do that too. so you can take your mask off. All right. Yes, let's start with an in-person question. All right, so Erica, would you go first and would you repeat the questions for our online folks?
Oh, hello. So how are we maintaining, creating, building long-term change, sustaining it long-term? That's the question. Um, so one of the ways with this grant specifically is we're really interested in building that relationship with Mellon. They approached us at first as a small public liberal arts. We got a second planning grant. And then the goal is to be really strategic about our grant reporting and our meetings with our program advisor to see the last final grant. But that's not guaranteed. So we are working at the college. We have the Berkshire Cultural Resource Center and the Multicultural Education Resource Center. So both of those we're working very closely with to see what types of programming can we sustain within those that have more funding and more staff support, as well as working with our arts partners. Here's what we are doing and learning. How can you integrate that into your education programs? But with the pandemic affecting enrollment, money is very tight. So it's looking to the funders and then looking to the existing assets and seeing what they can build on or include. So I'm sorry I don't have like a answer. Yeah.
I'd actually, tech gods, I would actually love to direct this question also at Jen and Cameron about their funding and sustaining the program, since they've sustained it since 2013.
Yes. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? Yes? Yay. Okay. So we're back. So our funding, as you mentioned, Jess, we started in 2013. It started small and mostly local. We looked at local foundations that we could partner with to seed fund the initial pilot that we did for the Arts Access program. So that started with a few local groups and resources there. But as we continued to grow the program and we just kept getting more and more momentum, Cameron mentioned the Arts Access pass holders, and really we started with maybe a couple hundred pass holders the first couple years that we did it, and we're up to 1,500 plus now. It's just more and more people, and that's both a pro and a con, right? It's a pro because more people can benefit from the program, but it's also a negative or a drawback in some ways because it just means that more and more people are receiving public assistance of some kind and need a service like this, right? So you almost wish like we didn't have as many eligible qualifying pass holders, but then again, we're also reaching out and helping so many of those people. So as we started growing the program and it started expanding through number of pass holders and the transportation request, we've been able to receive National Endowment for the Arts funding for the program. So that really is a large core of our funding, and we just keep tapping into the local family foundations and supporters and the National Endowment for the Arts as well.
All right, wonderful. Yay, technology works. Do we have any online questions?
Hold on.
Oh,
Hold on, Jess. Can you repeat your question to me or to us? Yeah. Tomorrow, do you want to answer or do you want me to? Okay, well, like I said, we're doing recordings right now. We're getting 6, like between 3 and 5 minute videos that we're going to share with arts organizations about this research and how they can apply it. As for diversifying it, we do have in our survey, we have the demographics of all of the answers. So we can see the difference between different demographics, how their answers may have changed in the data. And we do plan on sharing some of that. Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Tamayo?
Hello, it's working. So one of the pieces of information that we're sharing is around obstacles. And I think if we can dig more into some of those, we can also identify, why there are certain groups of people who are more represented, and also like understand who is drawn to this area, to the region, and why are they here, and is there something around that? So going back maybe to what you were talking about, Erica, about assets and, how we can balance sort of what is here with what the needs are. Does that answer your question?
All right. Do we have an online question? We don't have any questions. Oh, quiet folks online. All right. We've got another one from the room.
Yeah, so the question, we asked the question, what is the last artistic activity you participated in? And while they were answering that question, they were also asked, how many people did you participate in this activity with? And there was a bunch of people who said nobody else. It was just me. And even with those people, it reduced loneliness. So you don't have to be in a group of people to reduce loneliness with arts. Though we did find, like, if people were participating with 5 or more people in the arts, their loneliness went way down afterwards.
Yeah. A number that really stuck out to me on that one was that people who did their last artistic activity alone, 87% of them felt less lonely after they did it. 87%, even though they were alone. It's pretty miraculous power of art. Allison, did you have a question?
On? Am I on? Am I? Yes. Question is this. In one of your slides, you mentioned, Erica, that it was 52% of this group, was it people of color or general, did not feel welcome in the spaces where art was happening. Well, I'll finish. So whichever the group is, that's a big number. And I was wondering when you said that about the effect. So there are 2 ways to address that, right? One, you address the programming in the space. And the other way that I can see is through education, which is a long-term, kind of back to the sustainability issue and more of a long-term question. So I'm wondering how you're thinking of that and how the people you're working with are thinking of that particular problem with regard to education specifically.
So that number came out of the participatory community-based research that Berkshire Taconic had did, and they had sampled residents of the county and hello. So Berkshire Taconic conducted that research with the county. I can share the actual demographic rates of the population that was in the study. We made sure to have, I don't work with Berkshire Taconic directly, I just wanted to sample the research. What was the rest of the question? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I think for us at the college, we're really interested in educating, and I think our arts partners are as well. So there are participating arts organizations working even more closely with Berkshire Taconic to address the findings. And then recently, there is now this Inclusive Leadership for Change. It's a peer accountability network that also has 60 plus cross-sector organizations. And each Tuesday, for a minimum of 2 hours, we're exploring all of the work that has come out of the findings and providing shared learning experience for us to build that. So it's a little bit of both, but it's all being facilitated in those networks. I don't know if that answers your question. I have a bunch of stuff that I can share with you, like email the study to give you more of those demographic points, but because I don't work with Berkshire Taconic, I don't have that information right off the top of my head. So cool. Cool.
Hi, everyone. Jen from ASI again. I'd like to add on to this too. I know the question was directed, more specifically in the education realm, but the comment that was made about individuals feeling comfortable or not feeling comfortable in an art space. We've actually heard a lot about this when we started the Arts Access program. So it's one thing to have finances and transportation as a barrier to going to arts events, but what about those individuals who have never been to an arts event? What should they expect? How should they approach it? You saw that one testimonial that Cameron shared that for the first time ever, an 80, 85-year-old, an 89-year-old, and a 90-year-old went to theater for the very first time, and just kind of thinking about, what are their expectations when they get there, and that could be a real barrier, just because you don't have to worry about the financial piece, the transportation piece, but just feeling comfortable in your own skin when you're physically at an art event. If you don't know what to expect or how other people act or how to dress, there's those preconceived and not preconceived notions of what art is and how people interpret art. So I think that's a really big learning curve for us too, is that, part of the Arts Access program is about, I don't want to say educating people, but just making them feel comfortable and prepared just through conversations that we have with them, and kind of doing one-on-ones of here's what to expect, or how about, you can just feel free to call us or call the theater and ask them, what do I wear? What do I do? And just making sure that, everyone feels in a place where they don't feel out of the stream when they come there. And, as much as we can do to educate them and just have that conversation, or also just get them like the group nights that we were talking about, get everyone together so that they can get together and see what other people do, and know, hey, this is what is expected of me, or this is what I should know before I go. And we include that in our welcome packets as well. So I just wanted to add that.
All right, we do have an online question. So if the technology magic works, it pops up on the screen. Does the technology magic? Oh my gosh, look at that. Ooh, great question about engaging with partners to engage the greater community in access to the arts. Who wants to take this? I feel like that's a great question for Jen and Cameron.
So how we do this is I will research other organizations that may serve similar populations, and I'll reach out to them to see if they would like to meet. I'll discuss the program with them. So it's mainly research to find those communities, or those opportunities that we can partner with in our community, and maintaining that relationship as the years go on too.
All right, Erica, do you want to add anything to that?
I guess we start off with a conversation and we bring all our key stakeholders into that conversation. Faculty, what are you teaching this semester? Students, what are you interested in engaging with? Arts partners, what do you have to offer? And how can the Institute provide funding or other connections to make that possible? So it's a lot of discussion and collaboration. Sometimes it feels like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, but it's necessary. So I think that's one of the ways in our situation that we are promoting that engagement.
I just want to mention for the arts access study that we did, part of the instigation of that study was this idea that we participated in the 2016 Arts and Economic Prosperity Study with Americans for the Arts, which looks at the economic impact of arts in a community, but also collects a lot of other information from audience members. And what we noticed was that the demographics of the folks responding on those surveys didn't match the demographics of the general population here. Like it was way off, particularly in education levels and income levels. So for us, when we were doing this study, we wanted to make sure that we reached out to and educated partners like the Center for Public Health, organizations and nonprofits that serve people with housing and income insecurity, and local businesses that are interested in hiring, staff that haven't completed a degree, like coffee shops and other places like that. So we talked to them about the study. We got them to share the study with both their employees and their communities. So that was one way that we tried to build those partnerships. And I think we did have some really interesting data come from those two demographic sections in our study. And they'll be on the videos, so you should look them up when they come around. Do we have any other questions? Aaron. Why don't you come up so we can make sure the camera can get you?
Thank you for the question. I think one of the things that as a dance movement therapist we think of is I'll just keep talking, is to build with what's being offered in the moment. So we have this amazing technology, Zoom, this opportunity to sort of build. So, you talked about listening and responding, but do that in movement with what is available to us. And so I think, it's still developing. We're still trying to figure out what can be done. We know that some things can be done. There's still some limitations. There are probably some challenges developmentally, depending on the age of the person we're interacting with. And it's also like a whole new world. And I think there are ways in which to, explore like what are the benefits and what are still the big limitations that we need to sort of create together. So I think that's kind of what I'm thinking.
I have something to add in that one of my favorite parts of dance is the physical connection that you can have with another person. Like say in contra dance, you're physically connecting with another person. And now we can't do that. So whenever I went to Antioch and we're doing this stuff on Zoom and I'm like, oh, we're doing all this dance stuff. My favorite part is the physical connection, teaching to the most difficult thing in the room, right? Where we can't physically connect. There's two concepts that I learned, and one of them is mirroring, where I do something and Tomoyo mirrors it, and we can connect through this. And then also if I'm talking like this, Tomoyo can put something like that in her body somewhere else. And what's that called? Empathy, yeah, like kinesthetic empathy, right? So there are different ways to connect through movement, yeah, without touching, yeah.
Yes, so usually we do have what we call a practicum experience in different community settings, and we have had limitations due to the pandemic. And so we started to create some online community sort of, you know, with specific populations to engage in group. And there's been success. And I do think that, you know, for older age, it's more appropriate. It's been difficult to sort of do that with infants, for example, which is a group that we used to do in person. But there's still, like Sierra said, you know, ways of connecting, attuning as much as we can. And there also sort of, there's the benefit of sometimes we don't want to be seen, and we can sort of do that in our own space in a more free way and then come back into connection. So we're still being, you know, in community without having to show that part where maybe it's a little too much.
Right. Yeah, so it can, like the Zoom, my own physical space, I can turn my camera off. That's actually an advantage for some people. Thank you.
All right. Is there another online question? Oh, that's so exciting. We'll take this one as our last one. All right. Do you see arts access as a as a scalable initiative? So this is a question for Jen and Cameron. How can this access work facilitate cross-cultural exchange? Yikes. So bringing folks to events beyond home communities, bringing work from outside in or within communities that are changing, and potentially there's more to this question that I can't see on the screen.
I'd be happy to start with this here. So we're very fortunate enough that Buffalo is a very culturally diverse city. And,
thanks, Jen.
And so it's just a matter of making sure that pass holders have the knowledge of these events and going on, and letting them know that transportation is available at no cost for them to attend or to get to and to attend these events. So we really just have to serve as the communication hub for these events and let them know that they are able to go to these.
Yeah, and I'll add to Cameron's comment too. I think, you know, what we have right now, we've built up since 2013, and that's been really great progress, and we've seen a lot of growth in that way. But I do think in some ways we can scale it to outside of the community. I mean, we've had some challenges already just with funding limitations. You know, we talked a little bit about that earlier. If we could get more funding, sure, it would be great to also go beyond, you know, and connecting local residents with work that's happening outside, or bringing work that's happening outside those 5 counties that I mentioned into the community. We would love to do any and all of those things. But, you know, funding is really that barrier, even for us, unfortunately, as the facilitator. And something that we didn't mention earlier that I think is really important about the program is that even with the cost of transportation and kind of printing the passes and a lot of the analog, if you will, communications that we have to do beyond just email and website, one of the things that the participating arts organizations, they do not get compensated for the admissions and the tickets that they offer for free through the program. They do it because they believe in it and they think it's important, but we actually don't reimburse them. So if they say, for example, they decided to offer 10 tickets to a theater performance for Arts Access pass holders. That is 10 tickets that they decided that it was more important to give it to the Arts Access program than it was to have a paying customer, if you will, pay for those seats and tickets. But it's because we've created this culture and this conversation about how important it is to make sure that the attendees and the patrons of the arts also reflect everyone in our community, not just if you have the dollars in your wallet to pay for it. So the long answer is yes, that, you know, it can be scalable, but we still have a lot more work to do, and we'll be happy to continue doing that work moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, we are just about at time, so it's time to wrap up. I see we have one more question, but those of you in person are so lucky that you get to see some of these speakers face to face. And I think Cameron and Jennifer have shared their contact information on the Radically Rural platform and in their presentations. So if you need to get in touch and follow up, you can do that. So today, this was just one of many great adventures that we're going to have. So up next is a little break for lunch. Outside, you can find Miss V performing down in the Central Square Bandstand right outside. You could hear her warming up if you were in place here in the church. There's also a virtual mini mixer. So those of you online can join that mini mixer by just going back to your socio agenda and clicking on the Rural Placemaking Virtual Mini Mixer. And Erin, who's in the room with us today, is going to be co-hosting that. There's also a mural tour. If you've been in Keene and seen all the awesome historical murals around town, we helped get 16 different historical murals painted around Keene that tell lots of different stories of our past. The tour is at 12:30, and it's going to leave from a place called Railroad Square, which is right on Main Street. There's a large kiosk with a map of all the murals there, designed like inspired by the railroads. It's on the left side of Main Street. So they'll be meeting there in 15 minutes if you'd like to go on the mural tour. The next session starts at 2:15, and if you're on the arts track, that'll be here, and that will be our session on rural artist residencies and how they embed in communities. So thank you all so much.